We were living by the dollar. We were trying to like go around begging people for $50,000 checks. There was only 5,000 in our bank account. I told Simeon like, hey, look, we log in the OCBC together. I was like, we're dead. In 3 days, we're going to die. We don't know how to pay your salary. Angel investors can be very useful. The Asian market is a very relationship-driven market. And there are some of our neighbors are literally driven by multiple rich families. If you know these guys, you can do business in this country. You don't almost no way. Because of that, angel investors, that human-to-human connection, can sometimes be equally, if not more valuable than other kinds of investment. You're raising a $1.5 million round. You're not going to put $1.5 million inside, right? This is ridiculous. Anyway, we have 300K anyway. So maybe a good number would be maybe like 400,000. And then she said, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, and then she PayNow, like scan QR code. She said, can you give me a QR code? I scan to you. Yeah,
Is there anything you would do differently in your startup journey?
Yes, one of the big regrets I had was...
Hi, I'm Eric, host of the Sow and Scale podcast, where we interview entrepreneurs, innovators, and pioneers to tell their unfiltered stories for you to become a better business operator. If you like, please subscribe on YouTube and follow it in your favorite podcasting app, as that would help the podcast tremendously.
Today, my guest is Joel Lee, the CEO and co-founder of Protos Labs, a cyber risk management group. He is a second-time founder, having exited a HRTech company, and has a wealth of experience in the cybersecurity space, building B2B solutions. He studied in the Singapore Management University of Singapore, SMU, with a bachelor's in Information Systems and Organization Behavior. He currently lives in Singapore with his family. In this episode, we cover how his faith helped him start a business and get through difficulty, how he developed a proprietary cybersecurity framework that led to Protos, hiring, building a psychologically safe culture, and the importance of firing and raising capital, and the angels that helped him through. I was so inspired by his journey, and I hope you enjoy this episode. With that, I bring you Joel Lee. So how would your closest friends and family describe you as a person?
Interesting question to start with. Most people describe me as a person that's fairly driven. I think they would say that I'm quite, lack of a better word, maybe entrepreneurial. In the sense of I like to think about how to make money from different things, right? As early as like how do you sell mommy snacks in school and make money, or like some candies, or how do you lend your friends something in the secondary school and then make money from that. So that has always been my upbringing. People say that I'm resourceful because I came from a family that was fairly thrifty, right? So I think recently one of my staff said something like frugality breeds innovation. Like he said, I can see why you are an innovator, because as you grow up, you were given very little pocket money or little whatever things, right? And then you had to do with a lot of things, whether it be to like help other people, serve in church, buy your lunch, have your CC, and then buy your dinner, and all these things. So it's ingrained in me to do more with less. The creativity side of me comes out in that way, not in like a creative as in like fashion or design.
Diving into cybersecurity, it's a really interesting field. Big techs are hiring cybersecurity roles, cyber risks are rising. And it's still in the early stage of the Gartner hype cycle. There's still more than 10 years for it to fully develop. The demand for cyber insurance is growing at 50% per year in APAC, with the cyber insurance market globally set to grow from 14 to 20 billion from 2023 to 2026. Could you share more about Protos Labs, what it does, and some of the key milestones so far?
Protos Labs is a 3.5-year-old startup focused in cybersecurity. Specifically, we are in a space within cyber called risk management, which tends to sound very, very broad, but actually is different from just general cybersecurity in general, right? So within cybersecurity, there are multiple different domains like threat intelligence, incident response, security operations and all of that. Risk management is one part of it, right? And specifically, we focus on both risk management and also cyber insurance, right? So our main value proposition to the market is that we develop risk software that can help you to identify and mitigate cyber risk. In the event you still get breached, which is most of the time, then how do you transfer out any of that residual risk and protect some parts of your balance sheet? The impact of a cyber attack is more than just technical. It could be loss of reputation, it could be downtime in your business, it could be legal people suing you, it could be regulatory penalties. So there are a whole bunch of other financial aspects that can arise from a cyber attack, right? And insurance is one part of it that helps you to recover some level of monetary benefit, while the rest of it is more like how then do you get your business up and going? How do you prevent the next similar attack from happening to you? And so on and so forth. So our key value proposition is marrying both that software together with insurance in order to provide a holistic risk package.
Who are the key clients and what are the risks that they are being protected from?
The cyber insurance we started with focus more on protecting corporates, right? So that can be small enterprises, medium enterprises, LLCs, large limited companies, or it could be even global MNCs. So at the corporate level, cyber insurance typically is around protecting you against the first party or third party liabilities, as they call it. It's less around an event. It's more around anything that can cause you to have some business interruption. So that could be reimbursed or certain, let's say in the event of cyber attack, you have to call in incident response people or forensic people. That also can be reimbursed. So it's more around coverages of certain liabilities that can be reimbursed back to you. Whereas on the consumer side, it's more around specific insured events they cover.
If you're comfortable, do you mind sharing how growth has been in the past 3.5 years?
Yeah, so when we first started out the company, we were very much selling software directly to enterprises without the notion of insurance. Honestly, insurance was something we stumbled upon maybe about the second year or so. And then we saw that actually, hey, there are many cybersecurity companies out there, fairly crowded space. But whereas in the area of insurance and cyber, that's something that is a very, very not crowded space, right? It's a very new space, very greenfield, especially in Asia. Not many people understand that. So that got us on a route of learning more about the insurance industry, and then how then can me and my co-founder, marrying our cyber knowledge. From a figures perspective, back to your question, we've grown quite okay. I think we've managed to grow about 2 to 3x growth every year since we started. Hopefully that can continue.
Nice. Yeah. You completed your seed round in August recently, 3 months ago, securing $2.3 million USD in an oversubscribed seed round for regional expansion and product development. Can you share more about the motivation behind this fundraise?
Sure. We are an enterprise cybersecurity company, meaning we sell to enterprises. So we are the likes of, I'm not saying that we are the size of like Cisco and all that, but our main customers are largely large enterprises, right? And in that world, actually the sales cycles are long, as most people know it. So is the cost to develop a product. We're not developing here a B2C or B2B product where it tends to be a slightly lower cost. I'm not saying it's easy, but with enterprise, then more so there's less room for error. Development cycles can be 18, 24 months. Part of the raise of the round was obviously the fact that we needed to develop the software. But the other reason is really because of growth. I mean, to be an enterprise tech startup and to bootstrap is maybe a bit more challenging because of the upfront overhead costs and initial investment. So for us was both that, developing the software, but also the fact that how we wanted to use this to explore the two hypotheses in the cybersecurity world and so the insurance world, and to see how fast we could do that with that money.
What made you start Protos Labs at the very beginning?
Okay. So this is interesting. There's both a commercial angle and a faith-based angle. Prior to starting Protos Labs, I used to work in a US defense contractor called Booz Allen Hamilton. So most people who are familiar with the US would know that Booz Allen provides cyber capabilities to the three-letter agencies in the US. So very deep in capabilities for the Defense and Intelligence Department, where I led stuff they do in commercial companies in Asia. Booz Allen Hamilton International, I think that's what I call it. That was serving the likes of Fortune 500 companies, right? Government agencies and what have you. One of the last few projects that I did prior to leaving Booz Allen was actually a project with a very large global bank. And one of the days, I think I was asked to meet a new MD of a particular BU within that bank, right? And I'm going to meet this MD. He's a fairly senior guy. He's the CISO, and then what am I going to say to him, And then the guy meets me and then he starts asking me questions around, obviously, what's the work that I did, which I tried to answer. And then he posed me this question. He said, if I would give you this ABC scenario, how would you go about designing a framework to defend against or put in place a new framework that could help us better manage our cyber risk? Right. So I thought, this guy is testing me, I'm not sure what he's up to. And he's a seasoned guy. He used to come from there were always 2 people. One of them used to be CISO of another large bank globally, and then this guy was some other investment banker turned cyber guy.
But you prepared slides within the meeting and he's asking a completely different question.
Exactly, this guy is kind of testing me, right? So I went back and then I actually prayed about it. This thing is not so easy, right? I'm sure this guy has seen all the frameworks and what have you. If I'm just going to bring out some industry best practice, he really knows it. So what is he trying to go for, right? So then I remember in the middle of the night, God woke me up and gave me this idea. In cybersecurity, there's only bad guys and good guys, right? If there's a way that you could model the way that bad guys work and the way that good guys work and try to see how both the bad guys and the good guys meet, what would be the interlinking point? I drew this thing on a small whiteboard board from Daiso and said threats could be modeled. Each threat could be broken down into a specific techniques, right? So a threat is not just the name of a ransomware group or whatever. It's actually specific techniques that the attacker used. And if every technique could have a corresponding security control to mitigate that, then all you need to do is measure whether the control is working effectively to determine your overall risk or resiliency. Right? So I drew this 5-part diagram, threats links to techniques linked to controls, showed it to him. a week later. Then he told me this thing. He said, this is the very framework that I developed when I was in this other Australian bank, when I was a CISO, when I was a global CISO. And he said, this is exactly what I'm looking for. The fact that you could have what we call a threat-based approach as opposed to what traditionally is taught in industry best practice, which is a risk-based approach. He started out with one BU in commercial institutional banking, and then slowly he rolled out to 6 or 7 different business units. Today, that bank globally is a threat-based, threat-led bank, reported to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the PRA in London. And that work that I did as the intellectual capital that I created, I actually saw ways that I could improve that even further and productize that. And that was the genesis of Protos Labs. I actually took that idea that I did, and I was thinking, if they had continued to engage me, that work went up to phase 7.
How many months?
It was like 2 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So Protos was started with the genesis, that same idea that we had of how we could better combat bad guys or manage risk, and then turned into a product. So that was consulting engagement because I was in consulting firm, right? But now it's productized, scaled up several notches higher. Some of the methodology has been improved. That was the version of our early product.
How common was a threat-based approach compared to a risk-based approach in the day?
It was unseen and unheard of, but it made sense logically. I had to pitch it within Booz Allen to senior cyber leaders, and they were like, yeah, what do you think of that? We could monetize this. 2 years later, MITRE, as the international standards body, started to produce what they now call threat-based risk profiling, where they adopt a threat-based approach to advanced organizations in the US. They say this is one of the best ways to determine what's the best way to spend your investments in cybersecurity. Like, how then do you know what to spend X dollars on? You should adopt this particular approach because you are spending money on improving controls that will most reduce bad activities. Not every business unit has the same risk profile. For example, like when I first did this deal with the bank, when I went to corporate banking people, they used to tell me that their main threat that they faced were actually, they operated Swift systems, right? So they were afraid of people actually modifying the integrity of Swift messages and making fraudulent payments. A couple of years ago, there was the Bangladesh central bank hack that did that. As you go down the line talking to people, the next BU that came on board was private banking. I asked them, what's the top risk to you? So we did this whole workshop exercise. At the end of it, you come out, you realize they're not concerned about people modifying payment messages or what they call integrity attack. They were more concerned around whether they could lose their ultra high net worth people's data because their business was a relationship-based business. Then, all they told me was this, right? CIB would tell me all the cyber attacks that would cause a loss of integrity attack on my system.
CIB meaning?
Corporate institution banking. Yeah. And then private banking people, they say that tell me all the attacks that will cause a loss of data scenario for me, right? And therefore your money should be best spent on things that are most relevant to your business, not just like blanket or everybody's the same, right? Because when we get to retail banking, they're most concerned about ATM downtime. So they tell me all the attacks that will cause me a loss of client services or outage kind of thing. So we only nailed down eventually a loss of funds, loss of data, loss of client services. So like 3 main risks. Across these 3 examples, one can see the risk profile is very different across a large organization.
And when you were in consulting, you were mainly consulting banks and financial institutions. And right now, Protos Labs serves other industries as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so I serve mainly commercial enterprises that are fairly large now. So they could be banks, they could be government agencies as well. So Protos, we started out serving sort of similar clientele. I wouldn't say like global bank, maybe not Fortune 500 company because we're a startup, but that same kind of segment of the market.
And that's really amazing because I think you promoted 3 times within the course of like 4 to 5 years, which was quite fast. You mentioned before this is the fastest at that point of time.
One of the faster few. I think just within the international office, at least that's what my bosses told me, that you are probably one of the faster promoted ones. I think I had a lot of favor. Also, I had good bosses then who would look after me. And they saw the fact that I was able to maybe solve certain kinds of problems in certain ways. I'm not the best consultant. There are a lot of people who are better than me at presenting. But in terms of like building solutions, I think they saw that I maybe had a knack for that, like solving difficult problems. Yeah.
How did your experience before that help? You were in CSA, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, in the very early days. In fact, you were in Cybersecurity Agency. In fact, you were in CSA before it was an official organization. Yeah. I found it quite interesting. It was officially it's stated to have existed since 2015, but you were there in 2013, 2016. And then you were in OCBC for like 2 years. How did these shape your experience around cybersecurity? How did it attract your interest? And what was it like in the formative years of your career?
In the early days of my career, I was praying about what industry to join. I studied information systems, right? And then one day I remember God told me, he said, well, maybe look at what you had the best grades in, because information systems is very broad. You learn database, architecture, coding, everything. Suddenly there's some parts I'm very weak in, like software engineering and all that. And I remember there were 2 modules that I did particularly well at SMU. That was information security and trust. I had a lot of favor with one of the profs there, which recently I reconnected with. And so when I started my career, I said, hey, I'll apply for an IT security job. I don't know what that means. There was this organization for the government, the Ministry of Home Affairs, cybersecurity work for national infrastructure. Let's put it that way, right? And later on, they became CSA in the early days. When I started my career, if you look at across my the career trajectory, I've been in government, the regulator side, the end user environment like a bank. I've also been in the vendor environment serving customers in Booz Allen. I have different perspectives that help me balance what customers are looking for. From a vendor-facing environment, these are the struggles that consultants do. These are the games they play. And then if you're end-user environment, there's a different kind of thing, right? It's about how you manage vendors. It's the other side of the house, right? It's like two sides of the coin. I also have been a regulator, how the regulators manage licensees, what do they look out for, and all that. So I think that has helped shape my understanding of the market, even in Protos Labs.
Is it like being in a government agency that just started out? Was it like a startup?
There are startup-ish elements in terms of like, you're not sure what to do. But by and large, there's a lot of room to maneuver. Everybody knows everybody, which is great. I knew every director who would sometimes even go to the gym or play soccer together. Yeah, it was quite a small team, Yeah, but being government, they still obviously have a mandate. But it was quite fun, actually.
And at OCBC, you were doing cyber threat intelligence and endpoint detection and response. How did that shape Protos Labs today?
What I learned from OCBC gave me a perspective for the end customer that I'm selling to right now, right? So if we sell into large enterprise, OCBC is a classic example of an enterprise, right? A local bank has a different risk appetite compared to a global bank. Different kinds of concerns, right? Not saying that they're more risk averse or less risk averse or whatever, but so that gave me a perspective into like, if you are this kind of a profile of a company at X number of $1 billion, you operate a Asia Pacific presence, what's your propensity to work with a startup? When you work with a vendor, what prerequisites are you looking for? And then how do you navigate the procurement process? It's not straightforward. Like, the user and the buyer is different.
What made you quit your job and then go into the entrepreneurial life? Do you have a lot of savings? You want to try something new? Or like?
Actually, no. Actually, it's the opposite. So this is a bit of a personal story, but I'm happy to share it over this channel. I think Booz Allen had certain business decisions that made them reconsider the Singapore market. Irrespective of that, I felt a call of God to leave the organization. I just got married, had a kid, bought a house, and then a car.
How long were you in consulting while being married for?
4 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So then I just got married and I got a kid, and then, so this is a bit of the faith walk we have in the Christian faith. We talk about faith walk as in like trusting our God, which is the Christian God, Jesus, to be able to trust Him for something you can't see in the future, right? To today, I'm still doing that. At that time, God began to challenge me to say that, this is like a pivotal moment in your career. Do you want to continue going back to what you used to do? As in like work the corporate life. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I draw a decent salary and all that. But will you answer a certain call? Then I think I answer what call, I'm not missionary, you answer what call, that kind of thing, right? So then, but I also had understanding of marketplace ministry in the sense of I knew that the call of God is not only for full-time or not full-time. There are other things God call you to also, right? You call you to be a banker or whatever, of course, within certain guardrails of biblical foundations, the ability to hear God's voice can actually lead you down a specific path, right? So I then went to talk to my senior pastor about this. 2 years ago, I talked to him once about this and I said I wanted to start my own business. He said no. He said like, that's a bad idea, right? Because why? Because you're frustrated. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good point, right? So he said you should never make a decision when you're frustrated. That's why. And I also come from a church that's fairly Pentecostal. We move in the prophetic ministry. So what they say carry a lot of weight. They don't just simply say things. So he was adamant that I shouldn't do that. At that time I had a lot of money. I got a lot of no real commitment, no kid, no whatever. I just do anything I want, right? Now when I say this, I'm telling him, hey, pastor, I got kid, just born, then just bought house. But logically it doesn't add up, right? And then he said, you should do it. Then I'm like, what? You should do it, that kind of thing. So of course his views has some weight on me, and then I also prayed, and then there were specific things that happened to me, certain dreams. I even had random people calling me out one day and say, I see you in a dream or speaking at an entrepreneurship conference, I'm like, wow, how do you know that? I don't know you. So a lot of different signs pointed to the fact that I should take that step of faith out as much as logically it didn't make sense. That was kind of like the call that I had.
Wow. So you had a house, a kid, your wife, family to take care of, and you quit your job.
So that was tough, yeah. So in the early days, I was in another venture that didn't work out with some of my ex-colleagues, some ex-bosses actually. In that venture, I was with one ex-boss and his ex-boss. So 3 people, me and these 2 other guys. Now this is very interesting, right? Because this particular guy that is my ex-boss's ex-boss, he used to work in this industry that is this HRTech company. So when we were doing this cybersecurity thing together, we were on the side trying to help him digitalize parts of his brick and mortar HR business. And then I thought, this guy is an educated guy. By day, he's an MD in one of the large consulting firms over here in Singapore. Why would he want to do this? Then I realized that he only do this because he's quite an entrepreneurial, commercial-minded person. This industry must be fairly lucrative, right? So when I started Protos, and then the venture eventually didn't work out. Some of them, played me out and all of that. And then I was then stuck. I said, okay, God, I invested X months with them. They didn't give me a single cent. They didn't give me any shares in the company, whatever. Now I'm back at square one, right? And I already left Booz Allen. Now it's me walking by faith. This is already 6 months in. So my wife is also like, wow, quite painful. I thought we follow God and why like that. So then we prayed. One day God gave me this idea. He said this guy used to do that brick and mortar thing. Why don't you try and do it? And then you try and digitalize it, So that's exactly what I did. I had the idea from him in the way that I saw that he did it. He didn't share any trade secret with me. He just did it quietly on the side and asked us to help digitalize it. So I essentially digitalized it myself. So it was a traditional business around placement of workers, blue collar, white collar. I found ways to digitalize that. My main hypothesis was that because this was a commoditized market, what would make sense would be two things. One is transparency, building upon the faith-based values of integrity, and then at the same time having excellent customer service. Because within this industry, there's known to be scams and people don't honor their word, a lot of shady business, right? So I just built it upon really just transparency and good customer service, right? And what that translated to from a product perspective is that I had a website that I publish my prices, right? Which very few people do. And then I would also say that every customer, even if they are just a lead, not really a customer, I would service them to the best of my ability. I'll call them up. I would reply them within 2 hours. Basically, they will feel like they are VIPs, regardless of whether they eventually made a sale with me. And that went a long way. Actually, there were a couple of ministers who actually, worked with me and got services from my company. I launched it as a business that eventually grew 40 times. So I put in X amount. My first year revenue was 40 times the paid out capital that I put in.
Yeah, and how much do you make?
I didn't make a lot. I think because the business is not like fancy, right? So when you exit, it was a 6-figure amount, but a low one. Yeah.
And did you think to take a break with that money or go on some holiday? What did you do when you had that money go into your bank after exiting?
I went a full maybe 18 months without salary. Yeah, and for me to do that was actually the means that which I paid myself while I was doing both Protos and the HR company together. Yeah, it was really that long because at the time my wife was working with a government in the social sector. Her salary was very low and then we had a kid and all that, right? So that was a means that God gave me to pay my own bills. But it did more than pay my own bills because it was quite profitable. I could also come back to 3/4 of the comfort I used to have and all of that. Yeah, but the money was essentially just used to pay my own salary. It wasn't meant to be profit making. I knew that I wouldn't be a HR tech boss. I eventually wanted to get rid of the company and focus fully on Protos. Protos was always the main thing that I knew that God wanted me to do. But that was like, the HR one was more like a source of sustenance for a season. Yeah, something like that, yeah.
That's very interesting. Why the name Protos?
Protos means first in Greek. One of the themes in my life as I sought the Lord after I left Booz Allen was God showed me that I had a grace upon my life that was for pioneering. My dad was a church planter. He's an engineer by day, even today, but he planted a church a bit more than 30 years, what is known as Agape Methodist Church. When I first sought God for that, and then God showed me a team in my life, so I asked God, what was my strength? What should I do? Now that you called me to be an entrepreneur, what should I do? What makes you think I can do it? God started to show me. Firstly, your dad was a pioneer, and by generational blessing, I was sitting on top of the grace that he had on his life. I was also receiving that grace. Began to show me when you started a career in MHA, you did ABC things. One of the things you did was to start something. Then I went to CSA. Remember your first few boots on the ground? So you're also pioneer, right? You're not employee number one, not like PermSec or whatever, right? But you're not the CEO. So, and then later when I went to OCBC, God led me to start a threat intelligence program for OCBC on a group-wide level. So again, it was pioneering. And then when I Booz Allen, I developed this threat-based thingy, right, for global bank, which was first in the industry. God showed me like there was a consistent team that you thrive in a pioneering environment. So when I started Protos, I wanted to do something first of its kind, whether it be the threat-based approach to cyber risk management or now insurance, which coincidentally is also quite a greenfield area in Asia. I think that was the desire that we would be a trailblazing pioneering company, not just starting a company to enter a crowded space and make money. All the grace about my life is I function better in a pioneering environment.
Yeah, that's interesting. You found your calling. For those who are not so religious or those who are religious, do you think entrepreneurship is also a call rather than something that you can choose on your own will?
Yeah, so I think the call can be very loosely defined. At least in the Christian faith, the way I've experienced my journey with God is that you can be called to entrepreneurship, you could also be called to work in a corporate world. In the same way you could be called to be a housewife. I think the call of God is more around whether you can hear God accurately. Like Christians believe we have a relationship with God, right? Where he's actually a human being that talks to us and he loves us, guides us. But there are also critical junctures where God might call you out of something that you are doing as your business as usual into something totally different. Sometimes it could just be maybe calling you a step of faith to maybe say something to your boss or pray for your boss. There are different types of calls. Some may be more serious than others. For me, it was a call to step out from corporate life and do something on my own. Yeah.
We'll get back to how you merge the ideas of faith and money later, but walk me through your thought process for assembling a founding team for Protos. What qualities or experiences were you looking for? How do you know they're the right fit for you?
Yeah, something that we are still learning. I would say one of the things that people talk about in startup world is product market fit. Actually, there's another part, which is iterating on people and who you need. For me, it was firstly obviously finding the right co-founder. Sim and I were ex-colleagues. We didn't really work together on a lot of things when we were at Booz Allen. But one of the prerequisites I had was that I wanted somebody who was commercially savvy. Whether you're a CTO or whatever, you need to know how to sell stuff. And I don't mean sell as in like sales and marketing. I mean sell as in like, you need to be able to sell your idea to somebody, right? Because you need to sell your idea to recruit people. You also need to sell your idea to investors. You also need to sell your idea to customers. So you need to sell, right? And he showed a lot of that, And I think the second thing that I said was to him was that, well, if we're going to do this, then we need to like each other, because most likely we are going to be more than just business partners if you want this to succeed. We're going to have to be friends. So if let's say we're just doing this just because of a pure shared interest, then it's going to be challenging. That founding team, I don't think we had one. We had early groups of people that were there. I think now looking back at some mistakes that we've made, I would say the best kind of founding team are people that believe in the vision, yet are malleable enough to do different roles that may or may not be within their job scope, as long as it gets the company to where we jointly believe the vision will be. That is the most valuable kind of employee you will have.
Yeah. You were a tech guy, actually.
Yeah, so I studied information systems. Actually, I did very poorly on technical module.
I mean, both of you were business consultants. How do you resolve the technical requirements of Protos?
So in the early days, I used to get one of my friends and also ex-colleagues in Booz Allen to help me to build it.
You were developers.
Yeah, she's a data scientist, and actually now I'm in her church, actually. Yeah, so Simeon does a bit more building. He's an engineer, actually, by training. Not a computer science engineer. He was a triple E electrical engineer, actually. So the technical co-foundership is held more by him. I understand enough not to be smoked. I won't be hands on keyboard.
Curious. I mean, there's a stat that shows that friends don't really work out. Family doesn't really work out. Friends who work together before work out, and people who work together really can work it out, right? So you were colleagues that didn't work together, and you were not friends. How do you develop the relationship that was required?
So we were colleagues within the same cyber team. We only worked on one project together. So in a way, we knew each other, and I knew he was capable of not just really a tech person. He was actually a strategist, and he had a commercial sense. He could think bigger picture, like people caught in rabbit holes and all those sorts of stuff. Yeah. So in a way, we share certain commonalities in that regard. So I suppose we had experience working together, and then it grew from there. Yeah.
Coming out of consulting, did you make any adjustments to your work-life balance as a founder, a co-founder?
Coming out of consulting is good because there was a period of time that I traveled to 7 countries in 3 months, almost like a different country every weekend. So I was used to the long hours. And as a founder for a tech startup, it's the same. Well, for me, I try to follow, a bit like maybe mornings I try to spend more with my team, afternoons I try to spend more meeting people outside, like what I'm doing now. And then in the nights, that's where I do all the admin, create slides, reply to investors and what have you. So regardless, you still work maybe 12-hour days, which I think the banking and consulting rigor that I went through was very helpful because I was very used to that, having come from that environment. And I move fast. And in startup, you need to move fast because you don't have a lot of time. Time is money because your cash will run out, basically.
Yeah, that's true. What was the first steps you took to kind of validate the idea, the first kind of customers that you tested with?
So remember I told you that we came out from having done this for a very large global bank. Yeah, so I took some parts of the idea and then went back to people who held the same job designations, right? So what you call ideal customer profiles, as those group of clients that I serve in the global bank. And then I started to find, hey, if you're a risk manager in a bank that's of this size, would something like this become useful to you? They started to expand that to other industries. We realized that approach of being threat-based wasn't the be-all and end-all. It was more like, because of that, there could be use cases that it could enable. For example, it could enable you to prioritize certain cybersecurity investments better, or it could enable you to maybe quantify certain things better. So what then we shifted was then the ability to understand the approach itself enables the value to the customer, and what's the value that people are looking for, and then you work backwards. Sometimes it's a threat-based approach, sometimes it's not. Recently, we got awarded a cyber patent in Singapore. One of the first few cyber patents. It built upon that same approach, but extended with Siemens inputs to be more holistic. A lot of validation happened first by targeting the same ideal customer profiles and then moving to adjacent verticals. Yeah.
Was there an aha moment where you realized, where you're convicted about this market and this particular idea? Or were you thinking the client already paid probably millions or hundreds of thousands for this? So therefore, it's a market that would probably be very, very viable and profitable.
Yeah, so when I started Protos, I already had 10 years of experience working in cyber. So obviously the most natural is then you go and talk to your first degree connections who can refer you to second degree connections and so on and so forth. It also does mean attending like events and then trying to talk to people there. But just working within your network actually can bring you quite far, you know. I don't think there was really an aha moment. I'm still waiting for it actually, whether this is true or not. But essentially what we found is this approach is great, but it needs to be linked to the value. So then the aha moment is more like, what is the value this could be tied to? So in our case, it could be, for example, underwriting of cyber insurance policies. That's something we think that is exciting if we are able to underwrite that ourselves. That is one of the visions of the company.
You developed this approach within consulting, which they would take as intellectual capital. How did you manage the sensitivities of that when you came out to do your own thing to not make it seem like it was exactly the same thing, or to make it different so that you could kind of, reduce liability on yourself?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So because I created the idea, nobody knew it better than I did. The idea was actually a project manager and the project team was very strong. The real nuts and bolts of how that whole process worked, of course I shared with them, they demonstrated a lot of high level of integrity and sincerity, but it never really, like their secret sauce never really went beyond like that project team. So I knew how it would work, and if I wanted to modify it, like I say, I took it several notches higher and extended the framework a little bit when I came out. Only probably I could do that, and maybe the project team people could do that. But some of them are not cyber, some are strategy consultants, because the way that particular project, like Bruce Allen would deploy a few cyber consultants, one statistician, AI person, and a strategy guys. This is a transformation of a bank, not just developing a cyber solution and trying to sell it. This is helping them to rework their whole top-down policy and framework. But when I came out to avoid all these IP challenges, I changed it and enhanced it a lot.
So it was ultimately yours at the end of the day.
So there were people who try to steal it though. Yeah. Like, other consulting firms. I saw in the UK before, the exact same words I used. Yeah, on one of the consulting firms.
Did you try to sue them or something?
It's okay. Because we didn't have any IP laws around that particular thing also at Booz Allen.
I'm guessing that's why you patented it as well.
The patent one is the extended version.
It's different. Yeah. Wow. How does it feel to see people trying to copy you?
Both angry and happy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the startup world also has a bit of hate for consultants, right? But I'm guessing your consulting journey was really helpful for you. What do you think is useful from management consulting when you went into the world of startups?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up though. Actually, I never knew that they have a hate. I had heard people say that before, like from Temasek and all that. Like if a startup is started by pure consultant people, then probably
there are people that they think that management consultants, product managers, certain groups of people with biases towards certain types of jobs.
Yeah.
Paul Graham mentioned management consulting is not real work. Tony Fadell, founder of the iPod and Nest, who say, if you want to build a startup, you shouldn't be going into consulting because you're not doing a very real work there.
Yeah, I can understand. For me, I faced less of that because I had actually spent a great deal of my time in different environments. Consulting was 4 years of my life, but I spent my life in the consulting environment. So that was great for me.
And you were not a pure strategy consultant.
I was a cyber consultant, cybersecurity consultant.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, the work that we do wasn't just around advisory. Like, people say you just use your mouth and then don't do anything, right? But we actually had to build a solution for this bank of Excel that runs Monte Carlo simulations and what have you. And then you had to work, Yeah, so there was a domain expertise being applied there. It wasn't just like, I'm a strategy guy, that kind of thing.
What's your view of strategy, guys?
My co-founder is a strategist, and that's fine. There are certain people who are actually both strategists and they can implement stuff. Yeah, a bit rarer, but when you can find those are actually quite useful.
Yeah, I feel like when I look at the profiles of certain founders in Southeast Asia and Singapore, it does look like we have our fair share of consultants as well, and it's not an industry that is frowned upon when looking for like business owners, because maybe our society is more fundamentals driven rather than technical skills. I also heard if you're in the valley, if you're not technical, people don't take you seriously, right? So
Yeah, it could be. Yes and no from a cybersecurity perspective. Most cybersecurity companies in Asia, short of working for a global MNC, are more services companies. Yeah. And if you think about it, they're actually consultants, right? Whether it be the likes of some familiar names like Ensign and what have you, right? So I think the nature of the market is such that Southeast Asia consumes services a bit better than products. Like if you think about cybersecurity product companies that came out of Southeast Asia, very few that you can think of, right? Whereas Israel and like Silicon Valley, there's many of that, right? So maybe that's why, especially if you're talking about cyber and they're coming out from that space, most of them will come from one of these. Yeah.
So entering cybersecurity requires some sort of expertise, be it whether you're a regulator or end user or vendor provider.
I think if you attempt to start a cybersecurity problem, you have a good understanding of that problem because the world of cyber is a very broad domain. Think about it, cyber is only possible if there's IT. So cyber is one domain specialization above IT. In order to understand the pains of IT-related problems, it's best that you have an operator before and had some war stories, and then you understand the pain of running operations in end-user environments, whether it be CSA or in bank. You would know that some of the problems that cyber-related closely linked to IT problems as well. It's one the same. People breach servers taken care of by IT infrastructure teams, right? Yeah. Controls are deployed on the infrastructure. You are like two sides of the same coin. I would recommend, I'm not saying it's impossible, that people spend time understanding the pain points so you can speak to the problem better, especially for cyber.
So would you say that a beginner's mindset might not be the most helpful in building a cybersecurity startup?
Yeah, so I think the beginner's mindset is helpful maybe more from like understanding certain fundamental things of why security practitioners do things certain ways. For example, we have concepts like security by design, resilience as opposed to prevention. Those types of concepts I think is great when to have a beginner's mindset to question why it is that way. But I feel that if you're going to sell a cybersecurity product to a technical audience like a CISO, I personally feel it's probably a bit better if you have some experience understanding their pain so you can relate to it.
We're just going to take a short break because I wanted to thank you for staying till here. If you like what you've been hearing, please subscribe on YouTube and follow it in your favorite podcasting app and even share it with your friends. Join me in the WhatsApp group to connect with like-minded entrepreneurs and give me feedback. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get back to the show.
Now to just talk more about your culture and the team that you have at Protos. Protos recently got the NTUC award for being a most progressive employer of the year. You treat your interns with lots of respect, you take their feedback into account. So what's the kind of culture like at Protos and how have you been shaping it as CEO?
I'm not sure what the award is about. I know somebody voted us for the award. I know we cross-train a lot of people into cyber and we have a decent culture and all that. But yeah, so I think I learned a lot about culture building, less from the corporate world, even though I held certain leadership positions in the corporate world, but actually from my early years serving in church where I started a young adults group at the age of 20. I was one of the very young Methodist church leaders that started a group from about 8 to 10 very disillusioned youths and then grew them into a ministry that was much bigger about 7 years down the road. Yeah, in that process of pioneering and starting, I learned how to work with people, how to build an organization.
What do you apply to Protos with that?
So I realized a couple of things matter. One, you need to be able to foster a culture where people don't feel fearful to say what they need to say or they want to say. This is not saying that we encourage people to be disrespectful or anything like this. Yeah, but essentially your opinions can be heard because when people are heard, they feel more engaged in the conversation. Their opinion may not be accepted or whatever, but at least they have an avenue to say it and it's being considered. Ultimately, the decision could go another different way. So that's one. The second is I've learned organizational alignment is very important. True unity is when we have the maturity to say, even if we can all debate within a room, but when we come out of a room, there's a single direction we follow. And even if we don't agree, we can go with that. And even as CEO, sometimes when we walk out of a room, sometimes the decision, of course, the final decision can always be made by me, but I may take somebody else's suggestion and say that even though I don't agree with this, but because other people have made a decent point and all of that, I'm okay to try this out, right? And I will not try to sabotage the effort when I go out. Some people, they're not happy, they try passive-aggressive, right? See, I told you it doesn't work. Maybe they go and talk to a colleague behind and they say, I'm not going to work, we just do our own thing, that kind of thing. I will really put effort to say that since we all agree, let's go with this direction. If it doesn't work, we're not here to point fingers. So I think there's unity is very important and alignment. Yeah. The other aspects of it is more softer aspects like around how then do you practice servant leadership? How do you serve the people you lead? How do you lead by your example? How then do you ensure that you have the purest of motivations when you're there to develop them to their fullest potential? It doesn't mean I'm a nice guy. I mean, I fire a lot of people. By and large, I stay true to the fact that, when you are in my company, I try my best to align work that will develop you and get you to where you want to be. If we can find alignment, I will never secretly sabotage you. If you're not a great fit, it's better that I let you go rather than I try to play games behind your back.
So how do you fire someone
There's
nicely?
no real way to fire someone nicely. Whatever you say, they probably don't care, But I've made decisions to let people go and I told them why I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah, like for example, I think that their attitude is not great, or there's certain work performance they haven't been up to, and I have data to prove that. It's never like, I don't like you, or maybe because of cost reasons. I try to be as transparent and as humane as possible. Like, if you're letting you go because of a reason that you could have controlled, I try to make sure that at least you've been given certain kinds of warning and what have you. Unless I'm letting people go because of cost reasons, then unfortunately, even though you are the best worker, we cannot sustain the operation in this way. So I try to be very transparent with people. I try to help them also move on. Means like if you need to move on, write letters of recommendation. I can do certain things to and all that, but they will be clear on why they are being let go and if they had any part in it.
How do you hire?
There's certain framework that I use when it comes to hiring. So I learned this from one of the Christian authors actually that practice 3 C's: character, competence, and chemistry, in that order, right? So character is most important. I mean to say, you need to have the right attitude, the willingness to do things, and all that. Competence is probably the next. All things equal, if competence is equal, then character will be, sort of like, then we'll choose a person with a better character. Now, this is also not to say that you can be totally good character and your competence fail. Yeah, that's why it's ranked in that order. Last is chemistry. Whether you have chemistry with the team that you're going to work with. If you're going to draw people away, you're going to be a bit like a superstar kind of lone ranger, then that's probably not great. I try to fit that into that.
Do you have any frameworks around like selecting good leaders, identifying good workers, good employees? Yeah.
Still using that framework of 3 C's: character, competence, and chemistry. I typically, because of my experience building organizations before, I maybe slightly better at reading certain people, So if I see they're trying to manage me, that's always not great. There's a red flag. If they have intrinsic motivation, for example, sometimes I see my guys automatically can read about insurance news or cybersecurity news. Right? That's always a good sign for me. Of course you can fake it, nobody. But over time you can tell if people consistently do certain things. Either they believe in your vision, which is great, or they're engaged in the company. People are intrinsically motivated to do stuff and to learn and to grow. Right? I mean, this is your career. I mean, this is irrespective of Protos, you still want to be a certain professional, right? Whether it be insurance or cybersecurity or product or whatever, right? So you should take ownership of your growth. You shouldn't just, my boss didn't ask me what to do, that kind of thing. Yeah. So by and large, that is. I mean, right now, but it's always more art than a science.
How's the team structure currently?
So we have slightly below 20 people. I think what we are trying to do now is to establish a strong layer of second layer leadership. When we first started, it was just mainly founders, everybody else. Like 2 levels. So now we're trying to, as we grow, we need more decision making to be at the VPs or managerial level. So we're trying to do that. Basically, within the team, we have sales, marketing, product. We have the usual likes. But broadly, there are actually 2 very broad teams that I have. One is product engineering. That's one big team. The other is go-to-market. So the go-to-market team encompasses everybody from marketing, sales engineers, customer success, to sometimes even product people. So there's like a straight line that I try to align so that everybody will be on the same page. There wouldn't be a case where sales is blaming product is blaming sales, and what have you. I try to get them all aligned on where we want to go to. Yeah.
Wow, I see. Is that inspired by any sort of philosophy or single-threaded leadership? Or
no, just making mistakes and maybe praying.
Okay. Right now, Protos is in a scale-up stage. You just raised funding 3 months ago. What has been helpful in the scaling up process?
Yeah, the fundraising we closed as a rolling round for about 1.5 years. The first announcement was in October. The August one that you just mentioned, August 2024, right? They just mentioned is because one new investor joined, so they used the old announcement and they bump it up. We officially closed the round, but it had always been rolling. We started our first raise in something early 2022.
And by rolling, what do you mean?
As in it was, people could just join in. So, but people coming in means money was also going out at the same time,
What's been most helpful in scaling up Protos? What kind of information or people have been helpful?
I have 8 VCs that's on my cap table. I think in Asia, even though it's funny that I say this, I think angel investors can be very useful. The Asian market is very relationship driven. Some Neighbors are literally driven by multiple rich families. You know what I mean? There's certain countries that are neighbors, right? That literally it rolls up all to, if you know these guys, you can do business in this country. If you don't, almost no way. Because of that, angel investors, that human to human connection can sometimes be equally, if not more valuable than other kinds of investments.
Were there lessons learned raising that round? Like what? I guess it was also kind of a funding winter, some would put it. But how did you decide to raise a round? I'm guessing valuation wise, it would be a bit lower. It would be a bit difficult to raise funding as well.
Yeah, so we had the privilege of starting our fundraise before the winter, seeing it through the winter, and then after the winter now still fundraising, or at least we still have some small allocations that we are extending. I think two key things are important for fundraising. Your ability to tell a story. And I think that's something that people say I'm a bit more gifted in telling a story, like reiterating a narrative to people. And selling vision. Right? So that's one. The second thing I think is quite important is the ability to simplify stuff. I think a lot of founder pitches when I hear tends to be very, very domain specific. We don't really talk enough about what's in it for the investor, how fast we can grow, and why you and why now. Yeah, so I mean, the why you and why now, I think YC and that talks a bit about that. Yeah, but I feel like the ability to put yourself in the shoes of an investor is quite important as well.
Yeah, so to simplify your message for investors.
Cyber is dark arts, right? Insurance is as dark as cyber. We are dark arts. And how do you explain this to a person in a lay, like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, like, cybersecurity, there's a lot of cybersecurity companies now,
Yeah. That's very interesting. What made you decide to run a venture-backed company? There's the idea that some VCs might destroy value. Were you aware of these kind of risks, and how do you decide to raise your round?
Yeah, fundamentally, there are three main things that drive me. One is some of the people in the digital mission ventures community also believe in this. I believe that I would like to retain control of the company, regardless, right? So as long as that doesn't go away, whether you're Series A, Series B, whatever, that's fine. So that I can steer in a way that aligns with the vision and the values that I hold. The second thing is from an enterprise software company, I've tried my best to use whatever money that I have. But because of the heavy upfront investment, raising is some ways inevitable. It's just about how much you want to raise. Like raise just enough, don't like over raise, that kind of thing, right? So that's probably another good thing. The third reason that I raise is because I realized that in the Southeast Asia Pacific market, you need people with the right connections to enter certain markets. There are certain markets you can only enter by virtue of a joint venture. Yeah. On my investors I've chosen, it's like United Nations, one Vietnamese, one Australian, two Malaysian, Hong Kong. I chose them because they can help me enter that market. Yeah. With the eventual hopes that we will penetrate those markets because the Singapore domestic market is small and we need to scale. Yeah. So they are brought us for that.
Running a startup is like, some people describe it as eating glass or like jumping off a cliff and building your airplane. As a founder, you've definitely faced existential risks. Do you mind sharing some rejections or some of these risks, failures as an early stage company that you had to get through and how you got through them?
We won the cyber regulator, CSA, right? Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. They run a national innovation call every year. In the early days, I think we were one of the first few real early stage startups that won, right, back in 2020. At that time, the people who won were typically quite big companies, the likes of like Big Four, ST Engineering. You would think that these people have money to spare, right? I mean, why would they need to take government money and all that? But that aside, basically we were one of the early stage startups, and they came knocking on our doors, and they came to our office very early days. We were at Mountbatten, and they asked me this question: so, can you give us the assurance you are not going to close down? At that time we need like 3 or 4 people, like 2 co-founders and then 2 other guys. I tell them, gee, I can't give you assurance. I myself also don't know, quite banky, right? But I shared a story that I shared about what I shared earlier in the podcast, right? It's sort of saying like why I started this startup, what's on the line for me. Like I have new house, new car, my daughter is as old as my startup. I don't come from a rich family, I'm not renting out my house. I don't have any of these things. I just a very Singaporean guy, never studied Ivy League or whatever, right? So after I shared that, right, the long and short of it is they basically were quite moved, by that story. Because I'm basically trying to tell them that if you think that you have a lot on the line, you should think about my situation, that I'm putting my family on the line to do this. It doesn't make logical sense if I didn't believe in it. Yeah, so then they had the assurance that they will stick their neck out for us. Right, so we won, we took a large sum of money from that government contract, and then that extended to another a government agency that came on board and all of that. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was the favor of God. So maybe good storytelling or whatever. Paid quite a bit. Now there was a bit of there's a caveat to this. Now this is funny. So we won that thing and they eventually disbursed the money to us, but the project was such that you could only you could claim up to a large amount, but only whatever you spend. So with the first time doing business with government, so you don't know, right? So, but what we did is we know that the call for innovation is basically you have to co-develop the first version of your product, which is Nexus, with an end user company, and then the government will fund it, right? As part of innovation, with the hopes that if this end user needs it, there will be other similar organizations that need it, and then you can bring it to market and what have you. So now, when we first awarded this, we thought, okay, the project is going to start August. So then we started hiring people in July and June, right? And then lo and behold, they told us that actually the project start date got delayed, right, till September, October. I can't remember, a few months delayed. Then we were like, oh crap, we have to pay for these people on our own money. At that time, we only raised like some very small, one VC, I think 2 other angel, like syndication kind of thing, right? So then, yeah, so we had to literally pay. Then we said, oh, haven't started, then how? Then after that, we realized that because government sales cycle is such that even if it starts, they only pay out until it's consumed, right? So pay us like T plus 6 months. We had planned for T plus 6 months, but we didn't plan for this extension. Panic, then after that we were living by the dollar. We were trying to like go around begging people for $50,000 checks and all of that. I remember one time there was only 5,000 in our bank account. I told Simeon like, hey look, we log in the OCBC together. I was like, we're dead. In 3 days we're going to die. We don't have to pay our salaries. About half an hour later, we suddenly saw how we got money in the bank. Bank account when you see green means money inflow is out. Right? It's very clear, green color. Then we were like, how got green color? Then we went to check. Oh, because of COVID, right? They had certain grants, job growth incentive or whatever that came in. Then that sustained us another month. Then after that, we managed to turn it around and raise some funds. Yeah, that was a tough experience.
You mentioned angels and syndicates. So actually, before your Series A, you raised a seed, a pre-seed or something like that.
No, so this is still the same seed round.
Oh, it's the rolling round.
Yeah, so at first we raised, then we like, whatever, we got money. Because we got this large contract from Akong, right? Then, then waiting, it's just that now cash flow is important. They're not going to pay you out. So they delay the project, then how later. So now what we done is actually let the project start first, then hire. So it's okay, I won't die. And the first month you won't die, right?
You just do it yourself.
Yeah, that's why, yeah.
What made you do a rolling round? As compared to just usually you get you try to raise investor interest all at once, make them all feel like they have FOMO, and then you kind of raise from there, you pick, and then you close it at a prefixed time. So what inspired you to do a rolling round instead?
I wouldn't say it's intentional, to be honest. I would say that when we first raised, there was a story in how we raised our first $700,000 miraculously. After that, we were like, okay, feels quite okay lah. We're quite comfortable. So then we started, because I'm a commercially minded person, I don't want to grow a company just based off investor money. So then I started to focus the company on like how do we get customers and what have you. After a while, we realized we were doing pretty okay in the market and people heard of us. Then people started to come in. Originally, I think we wanted to only raise 1.5 million. Then people started to say, hey, I heard about this guy referred me to this, and then sounds like quite good. Can we come into the round? So then we started to extend that round out a bit. And then as we extend that round, as in extend the allocation around, then we also said, hey, actually with more money, we could do even more things, right? Like now we can explore this insurance thing, we can stay in London for X number of months, whatever, which we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. So then it allowed us to sort of like iterate on 2 very separate propositions, one on cyber, one on insurance, and then be able to bring that learning together. Yeah.
You said 700K was Miraculous. Do you mind sharing a bit how you raised that first 700K?
Yeah, absolutely. So we raised the first 300K from one VC and I think another VC/angel kind of platform. They're more like micro VC.
So you had like 6-figure sum from your first exit. You put it into this, and then how do you decide like I needed this amount?
Okay. So to decide that, you run some numbers. So we have a comprehensive financial model.
Okay. So after that, how do you?
After that, we decided we need 1.5 million, right? Initially, that's the plan. So it will last us 18 months. So we raised 300,000 of the 1.5 million. Then quite happy lah.
How do you get the 300?
So there was one VC and another micro VC with some angels. We thought, okay, 300, still got some room to play. At that time, our burn rate not so high, maybe 40,000-50,000, so can last 6 months. So still okay. So within that 6 months, we were quite confident we can raise another. Towards the end of 6 months, actually we didn't raise. Then we were a bit panicky, right? And I remember at the time we were living like going to die there already. So then this is another faith-based story. At that time, I remember we used to hire quite a number of interns in the company, right? Some of them are software engineers, some of them are. There was a period of time I was running around trying to scramble for new like $50,000 checks again, and then I was praying very hard for it, day in, day out, every day. I think God here so sian already, God kept prompting me to speak to this intern in my company. I was thinking, speak to this intern for what? I mean, I believe in servant leadership and all that, and I can speak to him. So I was telling God, maybe not now. Maybe after I pay this month's salary, then I can go and speak to this guy. Don't know. That's the thing. God keeps telling me to this guy. So I can't tell his name, but talk to this guy. So they say John. John, talk to John, right? So talk to John. I think talk to John for what? I mean, I can talk to John. I mean, I believe in investing to the future, all of that. Not now lah. I mean, you're gonna die. You left for 1-2 weeks, and you're gonna die. So then the third time God prompted me to speak to him. So then I finally said, okay, you know what? At that time, I was busy talking to VCs. I think I talked to some more than 40, 50 VCs. Yeah, I knocked on every door, So I said, okay, I talked to John. Then I asked John, let's go for a drink downstairs at Block 71, right? He talked. Then also not sure talk about what. So I end up just asking, hey, so what do you do? Then I realized he's a Christian. So I just encouraged him along the way about finding his direction, because he shared me some things like he was more a person that would just jump at the first opportunity, but he doesn't really know whether that is something that is good for him or is it God let him. So we just had a conversation, nothing to do with work. I never asked him, like, hey, what you do? Can you tell me what you do in the past 2 weeks? No, nothing. So I spent about 1.5 hours with him, right? I gave him the best of my time, I would say, in the time that I was struggling. From a worldly perspective, one would argue that's probably irresponsible. You should be spending time in VCs and all that. So now this is the interesting thing that happened. About 1 week later, after I spoke to this guy, there was this lady that met up with me. And she used to wanted to buy my previous business. Now, she knew that when I sold my previous business, I also had Protos. She asked me, what do you do? Right? So her cybersecurity. She said, I don't know anything about cybersecurity. But she's a very, very rich Australian property developer. Yeah. She called me one day and she asked me, are you still looking for money for your cybersecurity company? Then I said, yeah. Then she said, can you share with me like a pitch deck of what you will do? Or like some one pager or whatever. So then I sent her something. Within about a week, she got back to me. She said that, okay, I'm going to invest in you. Yeah, literally. And then I said, oh, okay, good. Then I was thinking angel investor, maybe 10,000, 20,000, that kind of thing, So then I asked her how much. Then she asked me, how much do you need? Then I said, well, technically you're raising a $1.5 million round. You're not going to put $1.5 million inside, right? This is ridiculous. Anyway, we have 300K in. So maybe a good number would be maybe like 400,000, And
From one
said
person.
That, yeah. And then she said, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, and then she pay now, like it's scan QR code. She said, can you give me a QR code? I scan to you. Yeah, she also signed the document, got her lawyer to look at it, like within 2-3 days, very, very fast. Then she said, okay, give me your QR code, pay now. And she paid me 2 tranches of $200,000. Yeah, it's incredible. And then
crazy.
God began to speak to me. He told me that what I desire from you is obedience. If you obey, I will align things up in your life, right? And this person just came out to me and just gave me money without any reason. She doesn't even understand cyber at all, right? And then from that period on, right, actually, we became oversubscribed. Yeah, people just kept coming to us to give us investments. So I asked him also this thing, what changed? He said, don't know, they're not sure. The only thing I remember changing is we changed the slide color. Like the color on our pitch deck, the format, the color changed a little bit, but the content is exactly the same. We didn't change the story, everything is the same.
Yeah.
Nothing changed. God just showed up, and then like the money just came in. And it was like miraculous in that way. We didn't pitch for whatever, we didn't have to. Then that's how we became oversubscribed. So from 1.5, then we realized that actually there's more people wanting to come in, so why don't we just extend it more?
Wow, that's really amazing. Yeah. It's a really crazy story, dude. I've never seen such a big pay now.
Yeah,
that's it's probably your first time.
You're going to pay me 200,000. She said, yeah, wait, tomorrow I pay now. She said, because today I need to readjust that limit. Then tomorrow I can pay now. They have the 1 day limit thing, right? Yeah. I was like, it's nuts, this lady.
Do you do your KYC, AML?
Really. Actually, we downloaded some free...
anti-money laundering.
Yeah, then we go and check. Then we like, okay, this lady seems fairly okay lah, yeah.
Since we're on money, I'm just wondering, on the other hand, if money dries up, what's your personal take on that?
Yeah, so I think there's well, in the Christian faith, there's a balance to have, right? In the sense of like, we believe the Christian God is a God who provides, right? The things that we need, right? Not necessarily wants or whims and fancies, but things that we need for provision. And because we believe that God has called us to certain things, the way that He has called people to be missionaries and to be whatever, we believe that He will provide. Now, in the journey of faith, it does not mean that because God provides, we can be irresponsible with stewarding our finances. So I think a big part of the Christian faith is stewardship. God has given you time, money, talents. How do you use that in a responsible way? Right? Christian people says that would be good. Also, but for general, just good. So I think there's a balance to have. So the fundamental principles of stewardship wouldn't be, so we are very frugal with how we spend money, even in Protos Labs. I mean, I share rooms wherever the same gender, even with interns who would fly with me. I take budget airline all the time. I try to stay a 3-star, 4-star hotel, unless given a very good reason why I shouldn't do that. Yeah, so I try to be that, even though I came from a corporate world where I only can stay in Marriott, Bonvoy, and what have you, right? So because I believe money doesn't mean you have money, you should anyhow spend it, I don't even go and buy like excessive like TV. I could buy a Carousel secondhand TV for our office, all those sorts of stuff. Yeah, so I think those don't conflict each other in that way.
Yeah. And I think now that we're on the topic of wealth, in the Bible, Jesus says you can't serve God and money. Mark Andreessen, a VC, said in another podcast that religious people have an underlying unease with the concept of money, the concept of trade, the concept of interest. But I think that's just superstition, fear of the unknown. Those things are how economies work. So I'm all in favor. So I guess, how do you go about resolving that tension between faith and wealth, right? Do you feel like as a Christian, there's also an unease towards money? How do you resolve that tension?
Generally, in the Christian world, I would say what Mark Andreessen talked about is probably quite real. Like people are very fearful of the concept of money because we know that money has been associated with a lot of bad things, whether it be like betraying people, selfish gain, all those sorts of stuff. Well, so while there's a place for that, one cannot deny that money can also be used for good. Think about some of the missions work being funded. I grew up in the Methodist Church and served on leadership. You can see some of the things the Methodist Church was able to do, in my perspective, is because they had enough finances to finance a school in a rural part of Cambodia, or building Methodist schools in Singapore where a lot of other people benefit, not even just Christians, right? Not just from Christian values, but good education in general. Money can be used for good as well. For some reason in the Christian world, people think the poorer you are, the more holy you are. I don't know why there's this kind of thinking. Almost as if like if you're rich means you're completely or something bad in rich. I feel like one of the things God has placed a burden on my heart is about the proper understanding of wealth. One of the things that I shared with you was in Deuteronomy 18, where it says God has given you the ability to produce wealth. Right. I'm certainly not talking about prosperity gospel and things like that in the sense of you give $1, God will give you back $2 and that kind of thing, right? I think that's not theologically accurate. But I'm talking about the fact that God can actually bless people so that they have the ability to creatively use their talents to produce wealth that could be stewarded for good of the kingdom. Recently, I came across this person who came to my attention. It was a friend of a friend. She was asked to leave because she didn't align with certain values in her company, values against the Christian faith. I thought to myself, she's a videographer. I offered to say that, whether I can offer her a role. Unfortunately, Protos is not a stage where we can hire people like that. We also don't need a videographer. But what I then did was I started to reach out to some of the entrepreneurs within the circle. And then I asked them, hey, do you all need a videographer? And some of them are much bigger companies than us. They are Series B, C, don't know what kind of stage company. They say, send to me. I hire them. Yeah, I asked them, I thought you did have a marketing team. They say, yeah, but can add on more, it's okay, I can find a job. I begin to realize that actually, if you're given that kind of authority, of course, as a business leader, but also the means to be able to do that, you can actually do a lot of good with that kind of, with the money that you have. And so I therefore feel that there is a good balance around like how Christian, especially kingdom entrepreneurs, can actually steward wealth and even create wealth that could benefit a larger, purpose beyond their own company having good balance sheets, and I feel that is something that God is slowly awakening the church to, that you don't just rely on people's donations and things like that. God has given us the ability to be creative, the ability to steward, and all of that should be given to use, so that wealth can increase for the good of the kingdom.
Money is associated with exploitation in the Bible. So I guess how do you kind of push against that feelings of greed? Everyone feels like they want more. How do you personally push against that?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a church that is fairly small. Most of them are not well-to-do, but they have a very generous spirit. And I realized that one of the ways that we combat these kinds of behavior, and this is what my pastor always says, is that by giving, right? Regardless of whether you can be rich and stingy. You can also be poor and generous, right? And your level of wealth has nothing to do with your ability to give, honestly. If you just don't have it in you because you are fearful of that you have lack, and if you fundamentally operate with that kind of mindset that permanently I'm in lack, or permanently I have a poverty mindset, or God is out to get me kind of mindset, actually you will never give one. Yeah, so I think it's the identity as a child of God and also the mindset behind it that matters. So one of the ways that we combat that is by giving. And some of the things that I do on a regular basis is I try to treat people to meals. Yeah, but sometimes maybe I'm on my team, I'm happy I buy them a meal. They don't pay me back. Yeah, they don't know that this is the reason why I'm practicing it, because I'm just trying to let go of something. I don't really have a lot. My founder's salary is 1/3 of my corporate salary. It's not even that much. But I still give. I still tithe and I still do all those things.
Tithe meaning just giving to church, right?
Yeah, just giving to church. And also like giving to missions and all that. Yeah. So I still try to do that even when it costs me. The other thing I think that people don't really talk about in the preparation that God does is as God prepares people to be called to certain things they want to do. There's a whole preparation phase. Like Joseph was prepared, sort of like in the prison. People say prepare in the pit for the palace, that kind of thing, right? So there's a whole preparation phase that God deals with character before he gives you certain levels of authority. Like if you believe that you are a kingdom entrepreneur. As part of dealing with character, there's a lot of stripping or denying of that he makes you go through. One of the things that I went through was that 18 to 24 months without salary, right? And that taught me about the fact that, if God wants to give you the ability to produce well, whether it should be for me like the HRTech business that sustain me or whatever, he can do it. But what he was after me learning to let go of my ability, the mindset of lack. Like at that time, I every day look at my bank account, die, that kind of thing. But what he wanted me to do was to rise up in faith, to trust that, actually the job is not your provider. God is your provider. God provides the job to provide you, It's not, even you don't have the centerpiece, the source didn't leave you, right? The source can still flow. The centerpiece is a channel. There was a stripping of reliance. There came a point in time, I remember I told my wife that, you know what, after having come up for the 24 months, of course, it was very stressful and all of that. But I started to have a new level of freedom where I could say that even if my bank account didn't show a certain amount of money, I would have the faith to trust God. It will turn out well. I told my wife towards the end of that 18, 24 month period, I realized what had changed. When I first started the 18, 24 months, I was like, wow, every day look at bank account, damn scared, like, wow, shit, I better go. And me and my wife even tried to sell some baby items online and try to get some money here and there, because her salary was low and I have zero income, right? At the end of 18, 24 months was very different. One day she came up to me and she asked me this question. She said, I want to go to Bali on holiday. We haven't gone on holiday in some time. And I said, okay, we'll go Bali. Then she said, then go Bali, then book what hotel? Should we go and share some, some hostel because we don't have a lot of money? Then she said, but then this hotel very nice. This is like some 5-star hotel, Then I felt in my heart, there was such a release when I said, whatever you want to book, just book. I was no longer afraid that I would not have enough money. And that was what the 18 to 24 months did to strip me of my reliance on money, but rather to rely on God. She said, what, really, I'm scared money? I said, it doesn't matter. As long as we are not extravagant or irresponsible with our money, occasional enjoyment is nothing wrong at all. We just do it. And God will provide for us. Yeah. But since that time, I never really worry about my personal bank account. I worry about my company's bank account, And then I asked my pastor, how do I apply the same principle to my company? And he said, not so easy because the people also look at you as a CEO and all that, right? You cannot be like, I'm not going to do anything, God is going to provide for me. You still need to be hardworking. These are all Christian principles. But by and large, I think I have a bit more freedom. God had to deal with that part of me, my fear of lack.
Yeah, there's the idea of riches being in heaven, knowing that your riches are in Christ. We don't have to worry about not having enough or not being provided for by the grace of God, for sure. Being a Christian, how does it affect the way you view and you operate your businesses?
I think as a Christian entrepreneur, any business needs to be revenue generating. If you are not making money, you're also being irresponsible. So recently somebody just asked me this also as part of mentoring, and I told that person that you must hear me correctly. I'm not saying that as a Christian entrepreneur, your business can be revenue losing or non-profit making. You still have to be a profit making company. But I think what is different for me is that the way that I go about conducting my business is different. It doesn't mean that I don't try to negotiate a good deal for myself. Obviously I do, but I would not step certain red lines that would cause me to slander, to lie, to betray people. Yeah, so I hold that close to my heart. I will not cheat you. If I got a discount for something, and then that discount is meant to be due back to you, I will let you know. If you are my business partner and then you gave me some business, I will not go behind your back and try to sabotage you and try to bypass you as an intermediary. Yeah, I will not do that. Yeah, so I hold those Christian values loyal to me. Of course, like the way that we treat our staff and all that, I think all that comes out. Even our mannerisms, language, how often we lose our temper. We're not perfect. And I tell my Christians this, right? As part of living in an authentic Christian community, sometimes I might say the wrong thing. Sometimes I might have wrong motivations and I might be tempted to do something not right. But we hold each other accountable, even though you are my staff. You can call me out on certain behaviors if you know that you are a believer and Joel shouldn't have done that. Or he shouldn't be thinking about this in a certain way. Then it's fine. You can let me know. But similarly, if I see that in you, and if you allow me to, I'll call that behavior in you. Yeah, if I see let's say you are slack or whatever. Yeah. So I think that's authentic Christian faith. I mean, if you say that we live in an environment where we are all like in church, right? Church is like Sunday best. Everybody nice to each other. Nobody really shout each other, seldom right? I mean, there are in the leadership levels, maybe you can hear that, but yeah, but by and large, this is when we live Monday to Friday, this is where the authentic Christian community comes out. I mean, sometimes you're wrong, but then you're quick to admit you're wrong, and then you repent. The guy called you out. You have humble enough to admit that you're wrong. Nathan the prophet called David out, right? And he repented. He didn't try to let's get rid of this guy. He's telling me what I don't want to hear, that kind of thing. Right? So that's what I'm talking about. When we live in authentic Christian community, you would see people being human and falling, right? And that's where we keep each other accountable, because we are ultimately accountable to God, right? Who's the chief shepherd or whatever.
I feel like a reason why a lot of people leave the church is not because of their beliefs, sometimes because of how the church looks. You're authentic to yourself, to your employees, to your first investor. To your investor, you have nothing. You have so much to lose. You have so much on the line. I'm wondering how you contrast that with, the uni, or maybe a person who drops out of school, starts a business with nothing to lose. You had a lot to lose. In fact, this school dropout narrative is something that some startup communities highly value, because there's so little to lose. You can do something very high risk. But I was also talking to a friend about running a business, and he said, actually, you should be thinking the other way around. You should be thinking you have a family, and if you have a family, you can't afford to fail. Do you have any thoughts on the school dropouts? People who are thinking to just drop out of school to do their own thing.
The concept of faith at work as a means of worship. Let me see, if you do your work excellently, is a means of your worship. Now, if you think about work as worship in the Bible, talking a bit about the Christian faith again, it talks about this, that I will not offer to God something that costs me nothing as worship, right? And I think that was the guy's name started with J. When David that's David wanting to buy the field from him, right, to offer as a sacrifice to God, right? And David said, I will not offer to God what costs me nothing as worship. If you apply this same principle to your work in the spirit of excellence, essentially what you could say is that there shouldn't be any easy come and go mentalities, right? So if the fundamental mentality is because I have nothing to lose, I can just sort of take my own sweet time, do it non-excellently, and all that, then I think the attitude will still need to be addressed by God, right? Because God sees the intentions of your heart, right? So if your fundamental attitude in all things are like this, then you're not suited to be an entrepreneur, and maybe you're not even suited to be a certain employee, and you've got deals with this. Whatever you do, most probably you will have some issues that people complain about.
You might not finish the work.
Correct. So then you'll always be sort of a person that gives up easily, perseverance. So these are counter to what the Bible is talking about perseverance, produces character, and then hope, and all these kind of things, right? So I think God, I'm more a person that believes God is after the character part of us. Now, if you talk about it logically, then of course, one should start a business before they have kids, then they have less, commitments, and similarly when they are out of school and all that. But there are also certain problems that I believe that when you want to best solve is only when you have experienced it yourself, a bit like the cyber story that I was sharing earlier, which makes you a bit more able to empathize with the problem, rather than selling to a space that you heard from theory rather than experiencing it yourself. So that's my view. I think there shouldn't be any kind of easy come and go kind of attitudes, especially for people who want to do Christian entrepreneurship.
How has your faith helped you deal with failure and doubt?
Before you can taste success, I think most likely you walk through a season of some failures. There's more character building. I try to go back to the fact that God has there's this song like God, he has the whole world in his hands. Partly I have kids that keep listening to these kind of songs. If you know that God has the whole world in his hands and he takes care of everything, he will also take care of you. Taking care of us does not mean our life is a bed of roses, but ultimately things will work together for our good if we choose to walk with Jesus. Our business might fail. It might mean whatever things in the first 6 months I did a business that I really felt that was that was what God wanted me to do. And if you have the attitude, I think that a closed chapter is never that you are in despair, but there is a greater hand that is guiding you, and maybe even opening new doors for you that you can't otherwise see.
Hey, we're just gonna take our final break. Once again, I hope you've subscribed to the channel and followed it on your favorite podcasting apps. I just want to thank you so much once again for listening. You could be listening to so many other things out there, And I hope to be able to create more podcasts such as this so that you are able to grow and be inspired on your own journey. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. Thanks for sharing. I'm just going to move into some broad cyber fintech themes. YC released a request for startups on Fintech 2.0, talking about how fintechs without legacy systems can build global financial products for the future. I'm just wondering if you've seen this play out within the fintech or insurance space, like with new technologies that exist today, kind of building more futuristic fintechs.
So if you believe that a startup is trying to solve a problem, then you need to return back to fundamentals and understand the domain of why things were even done in this current way. So like for us, for example, when we talk about underwriting, then we need to understand how do people actually underwrite insurance policies? What are parameters that they look at? How do they price them? Right? Almost like you have to be an actuary for a season. Because when you get down to fundamentals and you understand the domain good enough, you can then, as a next step, have a blank sheet of paper and to say that within this guardrails, what could be changed if we need not have to rely on existing methods to do certain things. So I think even with like HRTech, when we look at it, I think there's the fundamental things of why they do what they do, like I mentioned the underwriting or that, which I think if you understand enough, you can start to poke holes at why certain things can be done, and maybe certain things are only applicable for certain types of risks. Like in our case, some of the actual approaches to pricing what makes sense for things like professional indemnity insurance, travel insurance, but it doesn't make sense for cyber because cyber is a risk. For example, it's dynamic, right? It's driven by a human that attacks you, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I think fundamentally, maybe less about the AI, but more maybe about the legacy systems and the legacy sort of approaches to doing things. If you just understand the domain, take a blank canvas approach, you can actually come up with a new way to do it better.
And does it allow you to do things scalably as well at Protos, as compared to consultants or consulting firms who have to be really tailor-made?
Yeah, it does. So I think, of course, productizing stuff helps, right? So I mean, if it's an approach, the next question is really how do you make an approach into something that can scale, right? In the initial days, it's less about scaling. It's more whether this particular approach or way of thinking is better than the current and do people buy it. That's what they call product market fit, right? Yeah. Then later it's more around how do I optimize this so that I can do this with the lowest possible acquisition cost and the highest amount of return. And that's the scalability part. Yeah. So I think, of course, productizing anything tend to be like people say SaaS, spin out one instance takes you X amount of dollars, you can scale this pretty quickly. But I think there are also different ways to scale other kinds of products and services that go beyond these kinds of like SaaS-based approaches that could equally be, effective. Yeah. So in our case, we adopted a SaaS-based route. We said, okay, we'll productize this way of understanding risk or managing cyber risk, put it in the product, and then we only just need to maintain one instance, right? Then 100 people can use that. Then it's economics of, what I'm essentially saying is that, I mean, if you find a better way to address the market, it could even be, for example, maybe OEM strategy. Yeah, maybe you are the guy that nobody knows, but you are the guy that's transparent to the customer, but right at the back end.
And they can white label.
And solving the problem. So there are many ways to, as a business model, for bringing something to market, but you cannot be bound by too much legacy. That I certainly agree.
Yeah. In the US, there's a lot of well-established startups in a similar space who have similar models of cybersecurity and insurance. So you have like Cowbell, Covers, at Bay, raising tens, hundreds of millions in funding. Are you drawing any lessons from some of these cybersecurity players, and what's going to be difficult about applying these kind of playbooks over here in Southeast Asia or in Asia, APAC?
Good question. All of these people you talked about, we know. Right? So I think it is important for us to keep abreast of what our competitors are doing, but yet at the same time not to be fearful of what they're doing. So I mean, a lot of their, in the US, like some of these companies you mentioned, at Bay, Cowbell, I think they're what they call managing general agents, which means to say that they are like insurance companies almost, without getting too specific. They get a single license, they can sell in 50 over states within the US market. Whereas in Asia, when you try to do the same thing, what you find is that it is not a homogeneous market. You need to get one license in Singapore, you need to get one license in Australia, you need to get one license in what have you. And all of these markets are very, very disparate. It's not as if like you can even get a license. I mean, to get a license one is like 12 months, to get another probably 12 months, right? So I think having the understanding also becomes then important when you try to port stuff over, like from the US and Asia, to realize that the market here is different. For example, when we entered cyber insurance, one of the lessons that we begin to realize is that actually a lot of insurers, when they want to enter cyber insurance in Asia, they actually enter it through consumer cyber insurance. But when you go to US and UK, like I spend some time working in the lots of London and all that, I tell them consumer cyber insurance is really innovation in there. They tell me, hey, can you come and talk to us about what is this product I never heard before? So these are the nuances, because we realize that Asia is a very consumer-focused market. Even the fintechs are mainly B2C, BNPL, and all that sort of stuff, right? Yeah. Whereas if you adopt like a pure approach, whether we Ebay, Coalition, Cowbell, you realize that like nobody buys consumer cyber insurance. They will never believe in it. Yeah. So these are some nuances that we see. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you more worried about local competitors nearer to home or the US-based competitors?
Insurance, less about cybersecurity. Let's say we talk about like cyber insurance. I'm probably more concerned. There are some very big cyber insurtechs that are coming to Singapore, like Coalition and all of that. I'm probably less worried about them. I'm actually more worried about the traditional insurance brokers that actually have existing relationships with the taukees, that they could partner with a tech company to become insurtech. Yeah, because they maintain the relationships. Yeah, I mean the insurtech maybe not so worried about those.
And I think that's how some of the US cybersecurity tech companies also came about.
Yeah.
Without getting into the details, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in cybersecurity?
I think there's a lot of vendor fatigue in that it's a very crowded space, and if you are like a CISO, you will have seen maybe 1,001 solutions, and all from a marketing perspective sound kind of similar. Yeah, so it's very hard to differentiate yourselves from the noise, right? And that's one of the reasons why, like the moment there's insurance as an angle, that makes you a bit more blue ocean, right? If I can borrow those startup words, right? So
how do you differentiate yourself from your competitors?
when we talk about us serving the intersection of cyber insurance, that's very differentiated. Yeah, the amount of competitors we have in the whole Asia Pacific, less than 5. But the moment you say like cyber risk management company, or hundreds, 200s, it's more about what makes you different from them. How do you do it better? Then it becomes like a feature play, which is not great. The moment you get out of feature comparison, typically you lose. Because I mean, some of these companies, they have deeper pockets than you also, right? They can build faster, they can build deeper, they can build whatever. The second is, I think in the cybersecurity industry, okay, when you sell to enterprise, typically the user is not the buyer. The user might be a working level person. The buyer is probably a CISO or somebody that makes a decision on that. So, but both need to be convinced in order to make a sale. Yeah. So if you know the enterprise sales methodology, MedPick and all that, you begin to understand that actually understanding the procurement cycle, the paper process, convincing the user and then convincing the buyer. The buyer could be convinced about you, but the user may not be convinced about you. What that means is that even if they bought the solution, eventually they'll churn. Correct. So you need to be able to convince us. So one of our early clients in the government agencies here that we work with, very large one, they operate their own data center. Siemens spent a great deal of time educating the user. The CISO was like, we love this. This is the next frontier. This is the thing that we should be doing. Okay. Then the team like, I have like day-to-day issues that's nothing to do with what he's about, right? It's like, I just don't have enough manpower to do some very run-of-the-mill assessments. So my co-founder, Simon, I think he spent a great deal of time actually working with some of the security architects on the user level, like on the working level, and getting them to firstly understand the solution. Secondly, we also tried to tweak the solution such that we will solve some of their BAU pain points, like business as usual pain points, while also building for like there's a more innovative type of feature within the thing that is the frontier type stuff which the CISO likes. But we still need to deal with the ground issues. So that was one of those very clear examples that got us to win that contract because we actually work both sides of the house. Yeah.
On a more macro level, maybe CSA would have this question. How do you think the region can grow in terms of like cybersecurity space? I think they're looking to develop the ecosystem and develop more startups within the region as well.
Yeah, I mean, CSA just launched that Cyber Talent Innovation and Growth, right? The TIC Center. We also part of the ecosystem. CSA has done a very, very good job in awareness, education. They've also done a very good job to support the ecosystem wherever they can. I personally know a few of them. I mean, they were the ones who gave us the early days contract when they came to our office, right? So I think the real challenge, and I was sharing this very candidly with some of the people from the government, was that our real competitors for cyber, less people within the Southeast Asia region. They are more US and Israeli companies. And the moment, I mean, Israel has a track record of producing cybersecurity companies. I mean, the moment they come out of stealth, they raise like USD 20, 30 million, right, at 100 million valuation. And therefore, their ability to hire a very seasoned VP of research, VP of product, all that is way exceeds you. I mean, we raised 3 million, we're very happy, right? They raised 10x of us, right? And what can they do with 10x of that more money? They can execute a lot faster. They can grow a lot faster. So I think it will take a bit of time for the ecosystem to reach that kind of like, hey, can we deploy cash into in that kinds of amounts? Because I'm telling these group of government people that this is my feedback to the government, that if you want to play at this game of being a hub, I mean, Singapore want to be hub, right? Everything, right? You need to be comfortable playing these kind of numbers. Yeah. If you're not, right, you will not be that kind of enterprise hub. You can support maybe some B2C companies, but you will not reach the Israeli kind of a standard, you know. The irony is Temasek actually invests in a lot of these few companies. You know, that's just because of the investment mandate. I would love if they had an investment mandate to maybe support a bit more Singapore homegrown companies. I can see why there can be a bit of a hesitation given some of the quality of past and all that. But I think that's slowly also changing. There are some that are good ones that may be worth looking at. Yeah.
Sorry, so Temasek is supporting overseas.
Temasek has a hand in most of these big Israeli US cyber companies. Actually, yeah.
Moving on to some reflections, do you think entrepreneurial skills came naturally or had to be learned?
I think the resilience to be an entrepreneur, you need to go through a trial by fire. Yeah, you know, like you need to be the life of entrepreneur, and then you deal with all the different things that can happen in a single day, right? You know, people leaving the company, not enough money, you know, some customer complaint, you know, some media caught attention or something. You know, so we go through all that. I think that is necessary, you know, even if you have inborn like skills, you know. But I feel like some parts of being an entrepreneur, if you have good business acumen and entrepreneurial instincts, I think what happens is that you reduce your learning by some part. So that means your ability to learn and then to get to market, product market fit, all those things, right, will become shorter. I don't think it disappears. And then if you don't have that, then it becomes a bit longer. So I think that's mainly the only difference. Some of it may not be able to be learned. Yeah.
Do you think the momentum that you're currently experiencing and success is due to, I guess, God or yourself? Or some would say luck. I mean, so I'm just reframing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I have certain talents that I think helps in the entrepreneurial journey, and those are given by God. Yeah. So I don't think it's me and myself. What I have done is I have worked very hard, you know. And certainly that's also not contrary to saying that you have talent, therefore you can be lazy. You know, I mean, talent and hard work is the best, right? You know, so people talk about this like in football, you know, like they talk about like Messi, Ronaldo, you know, I mean, these people are talented, but they also work hard at training, right? And that's what got them to what they are, right? They didn't just appear one day and then they say, I'm all talent, I don't need to train at all, right? Yeah, so I think it's the same vein that is that I think I feel on a more personal note, God is also bringing me to a place where I begin to understand more of Him, that He can do more than I can do, right? As much as I'm a very driven person, I can do like work 14 hours a day, what have you, kind of things. I think God's trying to teach me also that actually even sometimes your rest might be more effective than you working. Because I'm trying to show you that I'm the guy that makes the thing happen for you, you know. Yes, you have to play a part in that you have to be hardworking, but you don't need to strive, right? To a point that you feel that the success is due to you. Yeah. So one of my pastors also recently, he was telling me this. He told me this. He said that many people say with their mouth that God has brought me here and God has brought me there after they made it, right? I mean, now they are this and that, you know. But that's what they say with their lips. That's what he's telling me. He said, but in their heart, actually, they feel that it's by the sweat of my brow that I achieved it, you know. And he said, if that's the attitude that you have in your heart, right, then you can be sure that the moment you consecrate your life to God in this case, right, He will be after that motivation of your heart. Because He sees your heart. I mean, what you say, your mouth, you can bluff people. I mean, you can be a smooth talker, you can be a consultant, whatever, you can bluff your way through, right? But you can't bluff God, right, in that sense. Yeah. And I think that all of us will have to go through that journey, that what we say with our lips is truly resonating with the work that God has done in our hearts, so that our intention is pure. Yeah, you know, that's why I talk about motivations and all of those things. Yeah, we can hide this even from my co-founder, whatever, but I can't hide from God. He knows, you know, whether it's bluff or whatever. Yeah, so I think there is a continuous work, you know, that is being done. And I recognize that in my life. It's not really about me.
Yeah. How do you manage your family, church, personal life, and your business all together? I mean, you sound like you work really hard, but you value a lot of these things as well.
Yeah, so this is the funny thing, right? So in my lead up to this whole, I wouldn't say this is like my core or whatever, you know, in that way, but my lead up to God preparing me to be an entrepreneur, and you know, there was a whole many years lah, where I worked, where I've been worked in, like, sometimes when you're in the process, you realize that you're the most sway guy. That means in every, whether you're working regulator, you work in bank, whatever, you are the most sway guy. You got the most difficult project, most difficult boss. You got everything not going for you, lah. And over time, I began to realize that was God building capacity in me. Yeah, the ability to deal with difficulties, build perseverance and resilience. And I think Jensen Huang recently talked about that. He said that one of the ways to be entrepreneur is to go through suffering. So he said that, I think, was it Stanford or what? The graduate, he said, I'm hoping that all of you go through more suffering so that you can become a better entrepreneur. So something like that, like God had to put, I believe God has a preparation process for people before he calls people to certain things. And for me, there was that, like through that process that I had to go through, that God had to build capacity in me to handle different things now. So like I started a young adults at youth church when I was in university, and then I was at SMU, which is the School of Information Systems, also known as SIS, also known as Sleep in School, that kind of thing. Like
My brother was in
So
SIS.
it's quite crazy, and then you still have to go and do this ministry thing outside. And yeah, so I went through a lot of that, which I look at hindsight, I believe that was God building that kind of capacity in me. On a more practical note, I think sometimes I feel a bit guilty. I don't always spend a lot of mind space and also a lot of time with my wife and some of my kids. Sometimes I'm there, but I'm not there. Like, you know what that means, you're there, but you're not there. That kind of thing. And my wife calls me out on all that, and I get annoyed. Sometimes I defend myself. But ultimately, I think I can be better at those things. I also serve a little bit in church, so I'm involved in the marketplace ministry, in the worship team, the Excel group, different things, But I feel like God also wants us to be like balanced people, not to like overemphasize one over the other, and I'm still learning that process.
Yeah. Thanks. What's an unusual or surprising skill you picked up while building your business?
I would say, this is a very interesting question. I mean, maybe being a bit more sensitive to what customers are saying. Yeah. So I think people with certain levels of instinct, I think sometimes I can interpret what people are saying in my own words, right? Like what the customer is saying. But sometimes actually when the customer says certain things, actually they really mean that. You don't really need to like read between the lines. You just need to just take it as what it is, and then build for that. Yeah. So that's something I learned from a co-founder. I think he's very good at taking care of customers, their existing customers. Yeah, because that's one thing good about consultants, actually, management consultants. Like people say they make them as customer success because they're very good at taking care of, like giving white glove treatment, make you feel like VIP and all that. Of course, you can't do that for every customer. You only can do that for the bigger ones and all that. Yeah, but one of the skills that I picked up was mainly really about like listening to them and not trying to overly interpret what they're saying. Sometimes they might say certain very stupid things because they really need this particular feature in the product. To you, it might feel very stupid, but to them, maybe it's not very stupid. To you, like, you digitalize spreadsheet, you just go down to Google form, you ask me build for, that kind of thing. Yeah, but actually maybe that's really like the need of the hour, and that's all you need to do. You don't need to try to add to what they're saying or reinterpret what they're saying. Yeah, it's just what they do, yeah. And it baffles me, but I'm learning. Yeah.
Do you mind if you extend to 610?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Just to sidetrack a bit, you mentioned your co-founder quite a bit. How do you manage that relationship with him?
So over time, I think we've grown to be friends. I mean, I try to take time to understand his motivations. Like I know he cares a lot for his family. If he's out of his family, I try not to like disturb that kind of thing.
Do you guys fight or disagree? Yeah?
Obviously, I mean, we disagree all the time. And I think that part of the disagreement also is healthy because eventually we will arrive at the same outcome. It's just how we do it might be different. Yeah, and I think being open to that helps with that. Yeah, I give a lot of room, not just for him, as you can see, also from the team, for them to give feedback around how we should do certain things. And I don't always enforce my way, even though I'm a CEO and all that. In fact, very seldom. Yeah,
Yeah.
So I think working with him has also, he brings a different perspective to a lot of things. As part of the development, I mean, I see him also as a peer, as an employee. I'm concerned genuinely for him to be able to reach his maximum potential. So I don't want ever that he would feel that if he works in a certain place, I will stifle him or the company will stifle him and all of that. So I try to align people's personal development, into the company. Yeah.
What's helped most in building Protos?
In what way?
I guess in What's helped you most in this journey of building Protos?
So cyber insurance is something that's very new in Asia. Yeah. And recently at one of the leadership offsites that I had with my team, I was sharing with them that and this was something that I felt that God was me lah, I was actually praying the night before. And then God showed me these things. He said, in order to know what to do, you need to know who you are, what you are called to do on a larger level, and what's the season that you're in. Right? Almost like a framework. I mean, for some reason, God speaks to me, it's conceptual. Then I shared that with the team because I started to ponder on that. And then I think about, actually what God was trying to say is that your identity needs to be strong. Meaning to say, if you are doing something that is trailblazing in Asia, most likely you will not, to recognize firstly that is who you are. And therefore you will not be able to follow other people sometimes. You might have to just find the answers within yourself, within the team, or maybe you pray. And that's why I essentially told the team who some of them are also Muslims actually. And I told them that if you're a believer in God, look upwards. That's where your answer is going to come from. Because even in pioneering, the first of the first who was really the true pioneer was Jesus. It's not any of us. Yeah, he's the Alpha and the Omega, right? So, and then the second is you look inwards. Do you have the answer as a strength innately in yourself or within the team? And then finally you look outwards. So who you are. Secondly, I think what you're called to do. So we are called to, at least we believe, that we're trying to do cybersecurity, uplift Asia's resilience against cybercrime and cyber insurance, right? So we know what we're called to. And lastly, what's the season that we are in? There are many people in startup world, if you drink a lot of the startup Kool-Aid, you begin to find that actually a lot of people think that startup is all around like, okay, every time you have to sell. And I also have people that I work with, some of my friends, investors and all that, who feel like all I need to do is just sell. If I sell and a customer come in, all my problems will go away, that kind of thing. But in wanting to build a more enduring and company, actually, you will begin to realize that there are certain seasons of time that is best that you spend with your team building. There are certain seasons of time that you spend not selling. There are certain seasons of time that you spend maybe more product focused. There are different things. So that's what God was trying to tell me that do you recognize the season that you're in? Right now at Protos, is it your season to sell? You're trying so hard, but you don't have much, right? Because there are certain internal things within the company that you're not put in place. Even if you sold, who's going to service them? And all these things need to be put in place. So there was something that helped me. On a higher level is basically being able to pray and be guided by God. Because sometimes that comes through counsel from people. So yeah.
What is there anything you would do differently in your startup journey?
Yes, one of the big regrets I had was I was a bit indecisive to let people go. Yeah, I think maybe too nice or I don't know. Yeah, so there's a period of time that actually there was a number of people that I felt they were not helpful to the company. I think looking back at hindsight, if I had been a bit more decisive and taken the leadership and maybe sometimes even disagreeing with my co-founder or whatever and just letting them go, I think that would have helped us a lot. Like I felt like we wasted time and also money, right? With a bunch of people that were not very vested in what we wanted to do. Yeah.
How have you grown since building startups? Is it like a exponential feeling compared to corporate life? I don't
I
know.
think you grow in a certain level of confidence and conviction in what you're doing. Yeah. So one of the people that we recently held a launch event for our insurance entity called Protos Cover, and then one of the guys who met me, he said that, wow, actually now the way that you talk was very different from the way that I first knew you guys like 12 months ago, right? Like the insights into a problem, the confidence in which you speak, is very different. So I think in terms of the growth, it's more like growing in that self-growth, like you grow in confidence, you grow as a leader, right? You learn how to manage more people, you learn how to manage investors, you learn how to... And why I say conviction of a problem is important is because if your conviction is not strong about a problem, you will shift from left to right. And when you shift, your team also can feel, right? So if you're not convinced and not passionate about a problem, neither will they be. Yeah, and that kind of conviction can sometimes be infectious. Like confidence, you can also inspire your team to feel that, we're not afraid, even if like some of these guys that they come to Singapore, because we have the giant slayer kind of mentality, and I feel that kind of thing is very culture building. Yeah, it's not easy to do, but when you have that in your team, right, actually you can conquer a lot. Yeah, because inherently they believe in themselves and they believe in the company and they believe in the people who's got their back. So, yeah, that's the kind of culture that I feel I'm trying to build. Yeah, I don't know how to put it in words, but something like that. Yeah.
How many times do you pivot?
Not many actually. We've only refined the idea. I don't think we've actually pivoted before. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, what advice would you give out? This is the last one. So what advice would you give to aspiring founders or people who are just starting out?
Okay. Yeah, so I think have a good understanding of the problem that you're solving. And when I mean understanding, I mean really understanding from an operator point of view, what is the current state of affairs and why you think it can be done better. Yeah. So having a very superficial understanding, like, oh, in general, I think scams can be reduced. That doesn't cut it, right? In fact, getting down to the fact of why scams happen, right? Maybe sit in the seat of a scammer one day if you can. Those types of things, right? Getting to very specific things and understanding the problems, or maybe sitting in the seat of police, right? And thinking of why they have such a hard time dealing with scam calls. If let's say you're trying to solve for scams, The second is, I think, have a vision when you build your startup, right? So if the vision can come from God, that's great, but if it's not and you don't believe God, that's fine. I think a vision just helps to drive you, because sometimes, especially if you happen to be in a trailblazing market and you're building something, you will not find a reference point for anybody who will tell you what to do. Yeah. And if you ask them, like, let's say if you're Uber and you're pioneering like ride hailing, you ask people, what would that look like? They'll tell you, no, a taxi should just hail, why should then? And you could very quickly form the conclusion that actually there's no real market for this. But of course, there's no market for this. That's why you're creating a market for it. So I feel that there are certain startups, if you're called to be a trailblazer and to be a pioneer, build for vision. Yeah, rather than build just on market feedback. But of course, when market feedback comes, then tie that with your vision. But build for vision. That's very important.
Like both market feedback, it needed to be feasible in the short run, but you also want a long-term enough vision. Correct. So that it makes sense.
Build for something you can see with your mind's eye. Yeah, and then because everybody could see that, everybody will be you, right? The fact that you can see something that you can't see means you are different, right? Of course, if to be that if let's say you're a startup entering a very commoditized market, let's say you're doing BPO, everybody do BPO, right? So then don't need think so hard. Maybe it's more around how can I do it cheaper, better, faster. Then you can go and ask for feedback from what are other people sort of doing, and then how can I make it cheaper, better, faster. But if you're trailblazing, I feel that the vision becomes even more important than normal. Yeah.
What's the favorite part of your job?
I think what excites me the most is the fact that I can get to work with people and use vision to develop them to their fullest potential. That's one. Yeah, so I'm a big believer of helping people to get to their potential. I believe the company will thrive the best when everybody's operating at their max potential. And some of it has also got to do with people's God-given destiny, right? That God, I feel, has put me as a leader in the company to steward people towards. The second thing I think that I'm most excited is that when you can see a vision coming to pass, you believe in this and you're building a vision, and when you eventually do it and then people say, yeah, actually this was what we wanted, but we never knew that how to say it, or what it could look like, but you could see it and you could build it. Yeah, I feel that that's something that excites me the most.
That's nice. Okay, I'm going to move on to the rapid fire round. So I'm just going to ask about 8-9 questions. And you can just answer quickly. Are you ready?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. What are
scary.
2 or 3 books that you recommended most to other people?
I recommend reading books on John Maxwell on leadership. I feel that most startup leaders shouldn't be reading on startup product market fit things alone. They should read more on leadership, because actually they hold a role as a leader in a company beyond anything else.
Any particular ones?
They are like, is it 12 basic laws of leadership, or is it 10? I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Give me a film or show you enjoy.
Actually, Lord of the Rings.
Oh, is there a podcast you like?
Nope.
What's a favorite meal that you've had?
I like Indian food.
Oh, what kind of Indian
North
food?
Indian food, yeah.
North Indian food, okay. What's something people often get wrong about you?
I think they think I'm a bit arrogant because of the way I talk.
Yeah, after 3 hours, it definitely changes. Okay, what do you wish more people asked you about?
Maybe what made me start my company.
If you weren't running businesses, what kind of job do you think you'll be in?
I actually think I might go and be a consultant of some sorts, because I like solving difficult problems.
Can you give me a snapshot of an ordinary moment of life that brings you great joy?
Drinking bubble tea.
What flavor?
I like Playmates bubble tea. I like Yakult, anything with Yakult or peach.
And pearl, what pearls?
I like this like QQ ball, like you bite and you have like all these things coming out, right? Yeah, so.
That's why I like Playmate, but okay. Not sponsored. If you had a day off with no work obligations, what would you do?
I'll probably spend time playing pool. I like to play pool.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe playing some computer games. I don't know. I haven't done it in a while. Yeah.
When was the last time?
Quite a while back.
Okay. What's one thing you're grateful for now?
I'm grateful for a very supportive wife, actually. So my wife actually supported me in the whole entrepreneurship journey. Yeah, even though it didn't make logical sense, but she felt that if that was what God was calling, she was willing to stand behind it.
Yeah. How can listeners find you and be useful to you?
Be useful to me.
I know you didn't want anything out of this, but
yeah, you don't really need to be useful to me. But I mean, we are a Singapore homegrown cybersecurity company. There are not many. If ever, I would encourage any listener to be more supportive of Singapore homegrown businesses. It doesn't have to be me. It can be anybody. I'm just generally excited that I feel that if we can get more Singapore companies to become really big like Queen Bee companies and that attract talent, that create new jobs for people, I think Singapore could potentially be in a place where we could be a bit more self-sustaining and like instead of just relying a lot on foreign direct investment. I have nothing against FDI, but I just feel that there are a lot of good potential within Singaporeans that I've seen that can really create some like world-changing kind of products and services.
thanks for speaking with me, Joel.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for listening to the Sow and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tan. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, a like, and follow it in your favorite podcasting app. Leave a review as that will be extremely helpful. You can also join our WhatsApp group where you can provide me with feedback and chat with like-minded individuals. Thank you once again and see you on the next episode.